All right, welcome everybody to our next presentation on the keys to the Mazzaroth. In this presentation today, we're going to be talking about the sign of Sartan, which is the Hebrew name for cancer. The crab with a question mark. Is it really a crab? We're going to get into that. And we're going to show how this sign and its symbolism and its minor constellations and major constellation and Hebrew letter correlation, all of that ties in with the final events dealing with the time of trouble, Jacob's time of trouble, Daniel 12:1, and the second coming of Yahusha. Okay, so first let's start with we want the biblical interpretation of Sartan. Now, Sartan is the Hebrew name for a crab. Um, but we're going to see if you look over to your right, here's part of my wheel in the middle where there's the sign of Cancer or Sartan. And Sartan is composed of two syllables, actually, Sar and Tan. So if you look at it this way, Sar means leader or captain, and Tan to elongate, to make something wide. So there's that definition. Um, Issachar is the Hebrew tribe that corresponds to this sign. He will bring a reward, is what his name means. The Hebrew month is Tammuz, and it corresponds to late June, early July. It means the sprout of life, beginning of a season of repentance. And then the all-important Hebrew letter this sign is represented by is our letter ayin, which represents the eye, to see, to obey, to understand, light. It is the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it has a value of 70. And then here is the ancient pictograph, and as you can see, it looks just like an eye. And then the glyph for this sign is a sideways 69. And so we're going to discover that even the glyph here is pointing to the second coming of the Messiah, and we'll point that out a little bit later. But yeah, that symbolism there, 69. In fact, I'll just deal with it right now. Number 69 is directly related to the coming of the Messiah. And the way we know that is when you go to Daniel's 70-week time prophecy, it tells you that unto 69 weeks shall be the coming of the Messiah. It'd be 3 score and 2 weeks, and another 7 weeks. It takes you to 69 weeks unto the coming of the Messiah. So at the end of that 69th week, the Messiah came the first time. So here is a connection of the number 69 with the coming of the Messiah. Okay, underneath our image to the left, thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder. Here we have the lion and we have the adder, the serpent. The young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet, because he has set his love upon me. Therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. And I think this verse here ties in with this story and this symbolism here. Okay, so now let's take a look at where we are and where we've come from. As we look up into the heavens, last time we talked about the sign of Gemini, and one was wild by nature, that's Pollux on the left with a club, and then the other one, more pious, that's Castor, and has the bow and the arrow in repose. Same with the club, it's in repose. They're not warring against each other, they're at peace with one another. And we discovered how this represented the union, the unification of the believing Gentiles with the believing Jews, this coming together. And how this was like a prototype of the first twins that we discovered in the Bible, mentioned as twins, is Jacob and Esau. And they were born to Isaac when Isaac was 60 years old. And that is the value of the letter that this sign is represented by. And so that's the letter Samech, has a value of 60. And it was when Isaac was 60 years old that the twins were born. And one persecuted the other, didn't it? Didn't they? Until they came together. When Esau came to hunt down Jacob, they ended up making up and they embraced one another. They hugged each other. And that is the meaning of the letter Stomach. It's to enclose, to encircle, to be equal, to just coming together, to be united. And so this is that Hebrew letter beautifully exemplifies what we see in this sign of these two not warring against each other, being united together, one leaning upon the other. And then we talked about this dog and how many times now we're not talking about domestic dogs that are very friendly and man's best friend and that sort of thing. These are like wild dogs, referred to in scripture as unclean and that sort of thing. And dogs that attack and dumb dogs that don't bark. We talked about this other dog and how we saw that that was representative of the Messiah and the brightest star Sirius, which means scorching, this great heat, and it's pursuing after the hare. And the hare is one that deceives, it represents deception. And we read how the Messiah said, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many." Paul said the same thing, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition." And how he would be destroyed by this by the coming of the Messiah, who will consume him with the spirit of his mouth and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. So here is this bright star and he's coming after the hare, the deceiver. He will destroy him by the brightness of his coming. That's all being symbolized here. And so this was the times of the Gentiles and how they looked forward to this day when this guy right here would take on this one here, this great deceiver who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshiped, saying, "I am God," right? And so we know the history of that when we go back and we study Roman Catholicism and the papacy and how millions upon millions were put to death, and Constantine and his role, and how many things were changed during the reign of Constantine and this merging of paganism with Christianity and changed many, many things then. A lot of deception came in. And so that's all being symbolized. But now we're going to move on to the next pivotal time period, past the time of the Gentiles, to the final events and to the second coming of the Messiah. And this is what we're going to see symbolized all throughout the different constellations for this sign and its Hebrew letter Ayin. Okay, so Sartan is a Hebrew, now it's the Hebrew name for this sign is a Hebrew word that means crab. The word is made up of two parts, sar meaning prince and ruler, tan meaning to elongate. Elongate means to make something longer, especially unusually so in relation to its width. Now here is the constellation itself. Somehow they get a crab out of all that. I guess I could see maybe the pinchers down here, and this is the body, but the body is circular, so that it doesn't really fit this picture. But if you do an image search for the crab for the cancer, this 99 times out of 100, this is what you're going to see, how these stars are connected like this. And notice right away that if this is a crab, then why do we have Acilius borealis, or the northern donkey, and the southern donkey? Like, what connection is there with donkeys and a crab? Absolutely zero connection, right? So already, something's gone awry here because the star names are not matching up with what this is supposed to be. Okay, now in Raymond Capp's book, The Glory of the Stars, that came out back in, I think in 1983, somewhere around there. Listen to what he has to say. In our modern zodiacs, we have the picture of a gigantic crab. It is the same in the Hindu and Chinese zodiacs. Here again, it is evident that the original picture, as well as those of Cancer's first and second minor constellations, that would be Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, the two bears, has been lost because they do not agree with the meaning of their star names. The Dendera zodiac, however, provides us with the key to its meaning. Although portrayed as a sacred beetle, Cancer was called Claria, meaning the folds, the resting places. This is in perfect harmony with all of its star names, as well as the minor constellations and their star names. In other Egyptian zodiacs, it is represented by the head of an eagle, which is probably Cancer's original picture. So I'm not the only one that is suggesting here that Cancer was originally representative partly of by an eagle. And here it is right here, the Dendera zodiac. This is Leo. This is the lion. This is Hydra, the fleeing serpent. So that's definitely Leo. It's also being represented here. And then before Leo, you would have Cancer. Now, where's the crab? There's no crab. There's there's right next to Leo, you have a bird, a hawk, an eagle, right? Um, and then you would come to Gemini, then you would come to um, Taurus, the bull. Here's the bull and its horns. So it's Taurus, it's Gemini. Now it's interesting, Gemini is just one person here, although just above it you have two walking hand in hand. So maybe it's being more fully represented by these two here. And then you have Cancer, but it's a bird. It's not a crab. So that gives us a little wiggle room here to go a different direction than a crab. Doesn't mean that the Egyptians had it all correct, but it does suggest possibly that maybe this originally what it represented was an eagle. And I think in our introductory lesson, we talked about Abraham and how he was a great astronomer, and that before Abram came to Egypt, the Egyptians did not have this knowledge of the heavens or of mathematics. It was Abram who brought that to the Egyptians. And what did Abraham know? He knew the correct figures for these star figures because he was an astronomer. And remember that Yahuwah had said to him, "Look up and tell the number of the stars if you be able to number them, and so shall your seed be." And it's interesting that he would use the stars to convey this message about Abraham's seed because Abraham was a great astronomer in his day. So that's interesting. All right, now here's another book, God's Voice in the Stars, Zodiac Signs and Bible Truth by Ken Fleming. And I really wanted to include everything he said about this too, because there's different schools of thoughts on what this represents. And generally, most people go in this general direction of it representing a fold, an enclosure, an inn, a manger, something of that nature, partly because of the two donkeys that are here in connection with this enclosure. So Ken Fleming says most planispheres show Cancer as a large crab, but this is almost certainly not the original symbol. It does not correspond with the ancient names of the stars, nor with the three decans with which it is associated, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, and Argo. According to the Greek legend, Juno placed this crab among the signs as a reward for helping Hydra in a battle with Hercules, in which the crab bit his foot and was then trodden on and killed. Well, we could care less about what the Greeks think because they Hellenized everything and turned them into gods and goddesses and things like that. But that's where that comes from. While there is no certainty that this is the correct symbol, the names in the sign of Cancer and its constellation indicate that such a picture is far nearer the original than a crab. Cancer comes from a root word to hold or encircle in the Latin language, and the Greek word karkinos is about the same. The term was chosen for the crab because of its ability to hold tightly with its large claws. What is of more importance to the seeker after the message of the constellations is the idea of holding rather than the literal symbol of the crab. Now, bear in mind, an eagle has that ability to hold too, right? And nothing can escape what is it called? Talons. So that would work there. The combined witness seems to be that of a sheltering place where people and flocks are safe and held fast on their way home. It is for this reason that they have shown Cancer as an inn. And then, of course, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. So there's that sense of holding, securing. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. Okay, so now here is the Cancer constellation with and without the right corner star tegment. First, so for some reason, this star here, tegment, here it is here, it's not included in the drawing. But when you do include it in the drawing, it changes the whole picture. Now you have an enclosure, a rectangular enclosure, twice as long as it is wide. Here is the beehive cluster or praecipe. And then here you have this. And this is where I began to get the idea, especially after recalling what I read in Raymond Capp's book, The Glory of the Stars, about this sign possibly being represented by an eagle. I thought, well, look at that. Here are a pair of what looks like large wings hovering or, above this enclosure. So while most commentators today see Cancer not as a crab but as an enclosure, I'm taking it a step further. I'm suggesting that it is not only an enclosure, but that there's a pair of eagle wings above it. And I have very strong biblical support for this, which I will be getting into. And notice right here, now this is the beehive cluster. It's a cluster of stars, an open cluster. And if you use this as the courtyard of the tabernacle that Moses was told to build, the tabernacle would begin right here, the holy place, and then in the most holy place would be the Ark of the Covenant. This is perfectly positioned if you compare this with the courtyard. And if you believe, now there's some that believe that the tabernacle is dome shaped, and I guess the courtyard would be circular instead of rectangular. But if it is rectangular, then this is a perfect, the proportions are perfect. It's a perfect parallel to the tabernacle courtyard, with this being perfectly positioned where the Ark of the Covenant and the Shekinah glory of Elohim would have rested above the mercy seat right there. And then you have this pair of what I believe is wings overshadowing it, just above it. So this is starting to get interesting. And here it is. Here's the beehive cluster, praecipe, which means enclosure, stall or manger. So this is getting far away from a crab now. This has nothing to do with the crab. But unfortunately, I have not been able to find historical evidence for it being anything other than a crab, other than what I showed you on the Dendera zodiac, that there was a bird there on a pedestal of sorts. And not a crab. But I've not been able to find any written historical account of or suggestion that it is other than a crab. And for that reason, on my poster, I originally had an eagle for Cancer, but because I cannot find the documentation historically, it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means I can't find it. I've put the crab back on my wheel, but I have a section on my poster where I talk about Cancer being an eagle and the biblical reasons for that. And we're going to cover that in this presentation today. Okay. Behold, he shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. Now, I always like to look up words like this, especially when you get into something symbolic like this. I got to look everything up. And so we're going to look that word up in a second. And at that day shall the heart of the mighty men of Edom be as the heart of a woman in her pangs. Okay, so behold, he shall come. Who's the he? That's the Messiah. He shall come up and fly as the eagle and spread his wings over Basra. Okay, so what does Basra mean? In Hebrew, it means an enclosure, a fold, a sheepfold. Wow. So here you have a biblical reference of the symbolism of an eagle spreading its wings over an enclosure, over Basra. When Yahuwah delivered the children of Israel out of Egypt, he said unto them, You have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. In like manner, at the second coming of Yahusha, the Israel of Elohim will bear his people on eagle's wings, bringing them unto himself. So I see a parallel. Just as the children of Israel went through the 10 plagues that fell on Egypt, the first three fell on everybody, the last seven plagues fell only on the Egyptians, but they were protected, but they had to go through that experience. And then Yahuwah brought them, as it were, on eagle's wings unto himself. And at that point in time, he was at Mount Sinai. And that's where he brought his people, was to Mount Sinai. And so I see the same thing happening at the end of time. Um, the people of Yah, they will have to go through the final events, through the plagues. If you have the seal of the Most High in your foreheads, then you will be shielded. You will be protected from the seven last plagues. There's also 10 plagues in the book of Revelation, just as there were 10 plagues in Egypt. The last three trumpets are referred to as woes and also referred to as plagues. And then after the woes, you have the plagues. And so you have, or after the trumpets, you have the plagues. And so you have 10 plagues again, but they will be shielded, they will be protected, and then they will be brought to Yahuwah, right? Who will bring his people unto himself. But it's not going to be to Mount Sinai. This time it's going to be up in heaven, I believe. So who is this that cometh from Edom with dyed garments from Bosra? So here's this word Bosra, this enclosure. And he's coming from Edom with dyed garments. This that is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. I that speak in righteousness, mighty to save, wherefore art thou red in thine apparel, and thy garments like him that treadeth in the wine fat. I have trodden the winepress alone, and of the people there was none with me, for I will tread them in my anger, and trample them in my fury, and their blood shall be sprinkled upon my garments, and I will stain all my raiment. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed is come. So now he's coming with dyed garments from Basra, which is an enclosure. And Edom is Esau, which and Esau means red, and Esau was one who was persecuting his brother Jacob, which is Israel. And that's what we're going to have at the end of time as well. Same thing. It's the same story repeating itself. But what's going to happen during that time? I will surely assemble, O Jacob, all of thee. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together as the sheep of Basra. Right here. This is Basra. This is our enclosure. And he's going to bring all his people and put them together, as it were, in an enclosure surrounded by the white linen curtain, a symbol of the righteousness of the saints. And then they will be shielded. They will be protected. They will be shaded with the wings, right? With the eagle's wings right here. The children of Israel delivered on eagle's wings. You have seen, okay, we read that earlier, how he bore his people on eagle's wings and brought them unto himself. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, that's up with his Father, there you may be also. So the same thing. He's going to get his people, he's going to protect them, they're going to come out of the plagues, and then he's going to bring them to the Father. Same sequence is happening all over again. And during this time, his people are going to be protected. And where are they going to have this protection? Where is that protection at? He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Well, where's the secret place of the Most High? It was in the most holy place. It was where the Ark of the Covenant was. It was where the Shekinah glory was, where the cherubim and its wings were spread out over it. He that dwelleth in that secret place of the Most High, they are going to abide under the shadow of the Almighty, right? I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall what? Cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. So those who are dwelling in the secret place of the Most High, which anciently was in the most holy place, right where the Shekinah glory manifested itself above the mercy seat, that's where you're going to be protected. Those who are in harmony with what's being symbolized there, which is the Ark of the Covenant, which is the Ten Commandments, right? Those who are keeping his commandments, they are going to be shielded from the plagues. They are going to receive the seal of the Most High in their foreheads. Thou shalt not be afraid of the terror by night, or for the arrow that flies by the day, nor for the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with your eyes shalt you behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made Yahuwah, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. So this is all being symbolized by the constellation, the zodiacal constellation of what I think is a pair of eagle's wings overshadowing the tabernacle, specifically above where the Ark of the Covenant is, the secret place of the Most High. If we're there, if that's where our focus, that's where our attention, that's where our mind is, then that's where we have our safety. That's where we will be protected. That's where we will be abiding under the shadow of the Almighty and covered with his feathers and under his wings. Now, these two donkeys, again, you have the southern donkey and the northern donkey, and then you have this enclosure, Mazzaroth enclosure, this sheepfold. Now, donkeys are used to herd sheep, so donkeys are very fitting here. If this is the sheep represents a sheepfold, then it makes sense you'd have two donkeys. Uh, uh, well, in this picture, you have one, but we have two donkeys, and I think that's also significant that there are two donkeys. Well, I'll show that in a second. In Babylonia, the two Asili with Prasipi were the Akkadian, and I'm not going to even try to pronounce that, but it means the yoke of the enclosure. Star names are lore and meaning by Richard Hinckley Allen. He's one of the authors that I trust far more than anyone else who starts to define the star names. He gives you the actual meaning of the star names in different cultures, different languages, what they actually literally mean. And so I go there a lot to verify some of these names. And I'll also go to Arabic dictionaries too to look at their definitions. Um, but I see these donkeys in association with the coming of the Messiah. Because when he came the first time into Jerusalem, what do we read? Tell you the daughter of Zion, behold, thy king cometh unto thee, meek and sitting upon an ass, there's our donkey, and a colt, that's another donkey, the foal of an ass. And a very great multitude spread their garments in the way, others cut down branches from the trees, and strawed them in the way. And the multitudes that went before and that followed cried, saying, Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord, in the name of Yahuwah. Hosanna in the highest. According to commentator Cornelius Lapide, Yeshua first rode the ass up and down the mount and then rode the colt into the city. Now, I had not heard that before, but that makes sense because I thought, well, why did he bring two? Did he? Well, he used both of them apparently. That would make sense. And then we read, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, that slayeth the prophets and stones them that are sent to you. How often would I have gathered you thy sons together as a bird gathers his nest under his feathers. Right here. This gathering together, this assembly, this enclosure, his sheepfold. How often does he want to do this? He wants to shield his people, to gather them into a place of safety and righteousness and holiness. As a bird gathers his nest under feathers, as a bird his nest under pens or wings. And thou would not. Lo, your house shall be left to you desert, and I say to you, you shall not see me till it come when you shall say, Blessed is he that comes in the name of Yahuwah. So all these connections with the wings and under the feathers and enclosure. And when he came into Jerusalem, he came with two donkeys, and then he parallels this with his second coming when he comes again. It's all beginning to tie together. Now, here's another thing that I noticed. Here's the crab. Now, above the crab is the water serpent Hydra. Anytime you have something above something else, its feet above something else or standing upon something, means this has conquered that, not the other way around. So whatever this represents, which I believe represents his people, as well as the eagle, which is the Most High, they are the ones who overcome the dragon, right? They're the ones that overcome the serpent. And we see in nature that it is the eagle. The eagle is the natural predator of the water serpent. Here's our water serpent, not the crab. The water serpent doesn't have to worry about crabs, but it does need to worry about an eagle because it'll snatch it out of the water. Um, okay, we read those verses earlier. And then also the symbolism, what happens when he comes? When the Messiah comes back, besides gathering his people together and shielding them and protecting them and all of that, he also does this. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. So, in addition to an eagle and its wings over an enclosure over Basra, you also have the imagery, the symbolism of an eagle, I believe, laying hold on the serpent, which is the devil, right, and bounding him 1,000 years. Pretty interesting. All right, now here's something when people will look at what I've said here and they'll contemplate that and they say, well, that can't be right. It can't be an eagle because because an eagle is already is represented by the sign of Scorpio. Is it? Because Scorpio means the scorpion. I mean, here you have it here on the top right. But what people try to do is they say, well, we have these there's 12 signs and four quadrants, and in the center of each quadrant, you have one of these, you have a man, and you have what they say is an eagle, even though it's a scorpion. You have a lion, and you have an ox or a bull, which are the four beasts around the throne in heaven. So you can't have an eagle, Robert, because the eagle is already assigned to Scorpio, and you're putting an eagle over in Cancer, right? So that just messes it all up. It doesn't work. Well, hold on. Just because you have one eagle doesn't mean you can't have another eagle, first of all. There are many other eagles. The Virgo, has a pair of eagle wings, first of all. You have an eagle Aquila in the sign of Capricorn, the eagle that was being shot out of the sky. And then you have another eagle in the sign of Aquarius. Well, we call it Cygnus, the swan, but in Arabia it was known as Altair, the flying eagle. And it corresponds to those who remember that sign. That had to do with Babylon's overthrow, Nebuchadnezzar coming in like an eagle, full of feathers and many colors. He was that great eagle. So you can have more than one figure in these constellations. But that's not my main point. My main argument here is this doesn't necessarily represent the four beasts around the throne because two of them, there's a problem. Now, these two fit. Okay, yes, the lion. And then three signs over, you have an ox, a bull. Okay, yes, that does work. But these two, in my mind, are problematic because this is very clearly a crab, not a Cancer, that the sun passes through on the ecliptic. It passes through on the ecliptic through the ox, and it passes through the ecliptic through the lion. So it should pass through an eagle here, but it does not. It passes through a scorpion, and no one would say this is anything other than a scorpion. It is a scorpion. And but we're going to get into why people say it's represented by a eagle. So I will be fair, and I'll present both sides, not just my side, and then you can make up your own mind. The other problem I have is Aquarius. Okay, we see a man and a water pot, but the Hebrew name for the sign of Aquarius is Dali, and it just means the water bucket. There is no man. That was added. The Hebrew name has nothing to do with a man. It's just the focus is on a water bucket. And we see this in Jeremiah 1:13 when we talked about the sign of Aquarius. This verse here is very telling. Then Yahuwah asked me, what do you see? He's talking to Jeremiah. What do you see now? And I replied, I see a pot of boiling water. That's all he sees. He just sees a pot of boiling water and it's tipping southward. and it's spilling over Judah, which is Pisces australis, the southern fish. Judah is the southern kingdom. It's just a water pot. There is no man. So, so you've only got two out of the four as far as a physical representation of uh, of a eagle you don't have, and of a man you don't have, because the Hebrew name for this only applies a water bucket, and this is very clearly a scorpion. I mean, of all the constellations, some of them are very dim and you can't always see them or make them out in the sky. But this one, you can really see all the stars. There's 13 stars. 13 is the number of rebellion, by the way. But you can see the whole outline in like the southern latitudes. Well, not even beyond in the southern latitudes, even down in my area, like down in Southern California, you can see all 13 signs. You can or stars all the way down to its tail and stinger. It looks exactly like a scorpion. It does not look anything like an eagle. It perfectly reflects a scorpion. So, so that's my argument here is that the sun is not passing through an eagle, and this only refers to a water pot by at least in the Hebrew name. And it perfectly compares to what Jeremiah was shown. And all the symbolism, all the constellations that we read about, we talked about in the sign of Aquarius with its Hebrew letter, it all relates to judgment that was being poured out on Judah. But it was, but all he saw was a water pot. He didn't see a man holding a water pot. Another thing people will do is they will go to the Gospels, and there's a story where the Messiah tells to a person to go to a certain house and look for the water bearer, that sort of thing. So you would have a man with a water pot, and then they make that connection. But I don't see that connection at all because again, there's not a man here, and this sign has to do with judgment. They just don't, people don't know where they are in the story. Most people don't know about these signs relating to different periods in Israel's history. And so they just kind of pick and choose and they just have stories all over the place and there's no sequence whatsoever. It's just here, there, and everywhere. Whereas I have a very logical, sequential order of events that are occurring in each sign, which to me is, our Yahuwah is the God of order. I can say that, right? Everything is in such perfect order, and relating these signs to different periods in Israel's history. I mean, that's just perfection. That's perfect order. Than just going all over the place. Okay. Again, here are, supposedly this is supposed to be an eagle. I mean, it's not an eagle, right? And then you have the lion, and then you have the oxen, and then you have Aquarius. These are supposed to be the four quadrants, and these are supposed to represent the four beasts around the throne in Ezekiel and in Revelation. Okay, now let's look at the other side and give them a fair shake. Here is the reasons why they believe Scorpio represents a an eagle. Okay, the emblem of the tribe of Dan. Now, Dan is a tribe that most people associate with the sign of with the sign of Scorpio. The emblem of the tribe of Dan was the serpent. Now, in the sign of Scorpio, you do have a serpent. Ophiuchus is lifting up a serpent, so that fits. In fulfillment of Jacob's prophecy in Genesis 49:17, which says, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backwards. Okay, so that's what Yahuwah said, or Moses said, and what Moses was shown about the tribe of Dan. Dan is a serpent. He's not an eagle, he's a serpent. However, the prince of the tribe of Dan replaced the serpent with an eagle. Okay, so it was the prince of Dan that did this. It wasn't the Most High that did this. So that's the first point. To Dan was given the symbol of Scorpio, which in the ancient Egyptian zodiac was a snake. However, when the time came to hoist the symbol of the snake, Ahiezer refused and chose instead the symbol of an eagle. Now that's interesting. I mean, there's some documentation for you. But this was the prince's doing. Ahiezer, he refused to do it. He refused to do what God told him to do, and he changed it to an eagle. And then in Unger's Bible Dictionary, we read Dan's position in the journey was on the north of the tabernacle with Asher and Naphtali. The standard of the tribe was of white and red. That's why I have white and red, by the way. And the crest upon it, an eagle, the great foe to serpents, which had been chosen by the leader instead of the serpent, because Jacob had compared Dan to a serpent. Ahiezer substituted the eagle, the destroyer of serpents, as he shrank from carrying an adder upon his flag. Well, I can't blame him. I mean, I wouldn't want to put that on my flag, that's for sure. I wouldn't want to have anything to do with a serpent. But that's what he did. But Israel did many things, right? They did many things contrary to the instructions that they received, contrary to the Torah, right? Many things. Does that mean that's what we should do or that's what we should believe or whatever? No, I don't think so. Only, every word that proceeds out of the mouth of the Most High shall man live, right? These words didn't proceed out of the mouth of the Most High. They proceeded out of the mouth of the prince of that tribe. So, but to be fair, that's where people get this from. And now here's something. Now I will even help them out. Just again, to be transparent and to be completely fair. This is everything that I found. Now here is the actual picture of the scorpion, so you can see it for yourself. There's no resemblance of an eagle here. Very clearly, it is a serpent with its 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 stars. Um, okay, and in the over here, in now Ophiuchus is holding up the serpent, and in the tail of the serpent, there is what they call the Eagle Nebula. It's a nickname, M16. And then under its wings is a rich stellar nursery of stars. So here's what they get the idea of an eagle, the eagle's head. Now this is just conjecture or speculation. I mean, you can't say 100% sure, yep, that's what God meant. He put that eagle right there. It's clear as day, 100% that's an eagle. No, I don't think we can go that far. Yes, it has some appearance of a bird, of an eagle. It could be, or maybe not. But we can't say for sure. But that is there. So again, to be fair to the other side, they don't even know about this themselves. They just use what I just shared in my last slide. But to be fair, they could use this. Oh, see, here you even have it in heaven. There's your eagle. Maybe, maybe not. Anyhow, the pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that says in his heart, Who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle. Now, Satan did exalt himself. He's the serpent. He's also represented by the scorpion, and he did exalt himself as the eagle. So the eagle can be compared to Satan. And thou that set thy nest among the stars. So that's interesting. Well, here's stars, and here is maybe an eagle. So that's kind of interesting. Thence will I bring thee down, says Yahuwah. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down from the ground, which did weaken the nations? For you have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars. Well, here is maybe an eagle above this nursery of stars. So that's interesting. I will give him that. It's like, that's interesting. But I still don't think Scorpio our zodiacal constellation here, it still doesn't turn that into an eagle. All right, let's get on to some more evidence that I have on my side. Okay, so happy 4th of July. Well, that's coming up here in a little bit. Happy 4th of July. Now, the 4th of July is a Cancer sign, isn't it? And I have Cancer being an eagle. And so isn't that interesting that our country is represented by an eagle? And our country was birthed in the zodiac sign of Cancer. The 4th of July is the Cancer sign. And we are represented by an eagle. So that's interesting. On July 4th, 1776, the Continental Congress approved the final wording of the Declaration of Independence from Great Britain. Thus, America's birth sign is Cancer, which I think is an eagle. And it's so interesting because they were fleeing the old land and they were coming to a land flowing with milk and honey to find rest unto their souls, to flee the persecution, right? To find rest. And so that's really interesting because that's what I see in the Cancer constellation is this eagle. And then these resting places, this sheepfold, where they're safe, where they're secure, where they're not going to be persecuted, right? So the symbolism, I mean, it's working out. The national symbol of the United States of America is the American bald eagle. I just saw one the other day, actually. The pilgrims that boarded on ships and fled to America are a type of second Israel fleeing into the wilderness from persecution in the old world to a land flowing with milk and honey in the new. One of the minor constellations of Cancer is Argo, the ship, which signifies traveling to a far country. And so it was with the early Pilgrim Fathers who believed that their Christian faith was incompatible with the Church of England and boarded ships such as the Mayflower to come to America to find rest for their souls. Very interesting. And even in the personality trait, now there's a lot of stuff I don't believe, that uh, in astrology and that sort of thing, but I do think the personality types work out. And it's interesting that the personality traits of a Cancer is about home, security, and rest. Those born under this sign are roots kinds of people and take great pleasure in the comforts of home and family. Those born in the sign of Cancer are maternal, domestic, and love to nurture others. In like manner, Cancer represents the home of the saved, where love, nurturing, and family will reign supreme. Cancer reflects the second coming of Yahusha to take his people to their heavenly home, to their haven of rest. And then when it talks about the second coming, it says to comfort one another with these words. So all that ties in. Okay, now let's get into the Hebrew letter because this is all the new stuff. This is the groundbreaking, revolutionary, new discovery on how these letters relate to these different zodiac signs. So there's a lot that this letter implies here. So again, Sartan is represented by the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet and has a value of 70. So we're going to look at the meaning of this letter, and we're going to look at the meaning, how the number 70 is used in Scripture, and even the number 16. Okay, so now here's our outline. Here's what we're actually looking at when we connect this star down here, Tegman, which means covering. Um, we have these wings, we have these two donkeys, we have this manger, this enclosure, this fold. Um, and now we have this letter Ayin. So now we're going to see how this letter ties in with this story, with this time period in Israel's history, which relates to the final events and the second coming. Okay, meaning eye, to see, to watch, to obey, understand, to know, shade, light. The letter Ayin implies all of those things. And what do we read in Scripture? Behold, he comes with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Even so, amen. But as it is written, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, near either have entered into the heart of man the things which Elohim has prepared for them that love him. Take ye heed, watch, and pray, for you know not when the time is. For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey who left his house. That's our constellation Argo, the ship. A ship implies going on a long journey, a far journey, and gave authority to his servants and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Watch you therefore, for you know not when the master of the house cometh, at even, or at midnight, or at the cock crowing, or in the morning, lest coming suddenly he find you sleeping. And what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch. So I mean, this gives me goosebumps again looking at this because what a perfect letter for this time period. This is a time period when this letter Ayin is really, really important because of what it implies. We are to see, we are to watch. There's things we need to obey. There's things that we need to understand. There's things we need to know so that we will be shaded, so we will be protected, and we are to be the light to the nations during this time, right? It's such a perfect match. Um, Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Yahuwah is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. So here we're tying in the meaning of ayin, which is also shade. And during this time, his people will be shaded. Egypt was glad when they departed, for the fear of them fell upon them. He spread out a cloud for a covering and a fire to give light in the night. And so here's our light. And again, this covering, this shade, it's all tying in. And now let's look at our number 70. What does 70 represent in Scripture? 70 represents the totality of Israel. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt already, right? So 70 is a number that represents the totality of Israel. This is those within this enclosure, they are the Israel of Elohim. They are the ones that are in the secret place of the Most High. They are the ones that are surrounded by the fine linen, which is the righteousness of the saints. Moses appointed 70 elders to help govern and judge Israel, right? The 70 elders represented all of Israel. In Genesis 10, the table of nations, after the flood, the descendants of Noah formed 70 nations representing the fullness of humanity. Israel is often seen as a priesthood to all 70 nations, meaning Israel's mission is universal, not just tribal. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Right? So what happens in this sign and what's symbolized in this sign deals with all of the nations and with all of Israel and with all the nations. There was a message to be preached to all the world. Daniel's 70-week prophecy in Babylonian captivity, right? That relates to Israel, specifically the kingdom of Judah. The Yahusha appointed other 70 also. So here we have that number being there used there. Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. Peter asked about forgiveness, and Yahusha told him to forgive without limit, 70 times 7. And then the number 70 can be seen as a tenfold magnification of 7, emphasizing the profound significance of both the number 70 as well as the number 7. The amplification, the tenfold amplification of the number 7 during this time period. And many believe that the seventh day Sabbath will be very critical. I believe it to be the seal, makes up part of the sealing of Yah's people at the end of time, those who are keeping the seventh day Sabbath, the biblical Sabbath. And then I also found it interesting that an eagle, that this sign I believe is represented by, has 70 main feathers. So another very interesting connection. And then a brief look at the number 16 as used in Scripture. The number 16 is strongly associated with love, and it's 16 manifestations in 1 Corinthians 13, 1 to 13. There's 16 manifestations of love. And love has a lot to do with, blessed are those that do his commandments, who love God and keep his commandments, right? It's a very important attribute during this time period is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, your neighbor as yourself, and to love his commandments and be as David, who said, "Oh, how I love thy law. It is my meditation all the day long." How he loves his Torah, his instructions for living. And now look at this. So here, when we combine the gematria of the matriarchs and the patriarchs of Israel, it's 70 times 70. So here are the matriarchs, beginning with Sarah and her value, and then Rebecca, and then Leah and Rachel, and then the 12 sons and their gematria values added up, and then the uh, patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You add all these up together, what do you get? You get 4,900, which is 70 times 70. So again, the number 70 applies all of Israel. It includes all of Israel and all of the nations. And the nations are represented initially by there were 70 nations. And so this totality is being emphasized here. Okay, opposing signs in the zodiac are related to each other, and many of them have the same symbol. So this is another thing I bring out why I feel like Cancer may be represented by an eagle, because you have these corresponding similarities between signs that oppose each other, that are on the opposite side of the zodiac wheel. So In the sign of Scorpio, you have Hercules wearing the skin of a lion, while in the opposing sign of Taurus, Orion is holding the head of a lion. And both are yielding a mighty sword. So here's the sword, here's the sword, here's the lion, here's the lion. So that's pretty interesting. One is stepping on Draco the dragon, the other one's stepping on the hare, the deceiver. They're both one and the same, right? Similarity, opposing signs. Same thing with Sagittarius. You have a bow and an arrow in this archer, although the Hebrew only applies the bow, and that's it, not a centaur. But you have the bow and the arrow, and then the opposing sign on the other side of the zodiac, you have Gemini, and here you have the bow and arrow. And then and then if Cancer is a eagle, do we have an eagle on the opposite side? We sure do. In Capricorn, you have Aquila, the eagle. So there's another possible connection. Okay, now let's look at this is a really cool thing to do too. Whenever you're looking at these letters, many of you know that Psalms 119 is divided into these divisions of 8 verses, and each division is represented by one of the 22 Hebrew letters. And so, because we're looking at the letter Ayin for the sign of Cancer, let's see what that set of 8 verses says that's headed by the letter Ayin. So that means these verses are going to relate to the meaning of this letter Ayin. What does it say? I have done judgment and justice. Leave me not to mine oppressors. Well, that's what's going on in the sign, right? We have the final events and this persecution of Yah's people. And what is being said here related to the letter Ayin that Cancer is represented by? Leave me not to mine oppressors. Be surety for thy servant for good. Let not the proud oppress me. So there's this oppression. Mine eyes, that's the letter Ayin, fail for thy salvation and for the word of thy righteousness. Deal with thy servant according unto thy mercy and teach me thy statutes. Yep, we need to understand and obey and keep his statutes. I am thy servant. Give me understanding. That's part of the meaning of the letter Ayin is to know, to understand. And here he says, give me understanding that I may know thy testimonies. It is time for thee, Yahuwah, to work, for they have made void thy law. Boy, does that ever apply, right? When Elohim's law is made void in the land, that is the time for him to work. And here you have it right here under the letter Ayin, that this is what's going to be going on during the sign of Cancer that's represented by the letter Ayin. They have made void thy law. Therefore, I love thy commandments above gold, yea, above fine gold. So here we are tying in the number 16. Ayin is the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And here it beautifully ties in with loving his commandments during this time when the law is being made, when his laws are being made void. Again, here is the meaning. I, to see, obey, understand, to know, to shade, light. Love is connected to the letter Ayin, and that Ayin is the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, a number strongly associated with love and its 16 manifestations. We read that earlier. If you love me, keep my commandments, for this is the love of God that we keep his commandments. So all this is tied in beautifully. And this is what we're coming to. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which stands for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered. So this is a sign of deliverance, this time of trouble, a time of deliverance. And that's just like Israel was delivered by Yahuwah, who bore them on eagle's wings and brought them unto himself. Now, if you look at Psalms 70, we want to get all the information we can get from the Bible that's related to the number 70 and the letter Ayin. And so here I turn to Psalm 70 to see what the theme is there, and it is a theme of deliverance. Perfect. Make haste, O Elohim, to deliver me. Make haste to help me, O Yahuwah. Let them be ashamed and confounded that seek after my soul. Let them be turned backward and put to confusion that desire my hurt. Let them be turned back for a reward of their shame that say, Aha, aha. Let all those that seek thee rejoice and be glad in thee. And let such as love thy salvation say continually, Let Elohim be magnified. But I am poor and needy. Make haste unto me, O Elohim. Thou art my help and my deliverer. So a beautiful connection.